Thank you, Lisa. Hopefully I can share my screen. Can I do a quick check to make sure you can see my presentation? Oh, I see a thumbs up, Mike. Thank you very much. So good morning, everyone. I do recognize that I am right before lunch, so I will not go over that 12 o'clock spot. Really the start of my presentation, like what made me have the desire to present this at Shoalition today is in thinking about the journey sort of that we've been on with the Ottawa Substance Abuse Prevention Coalition and sort of where we are in sort of the coalition journey is I really recognized that our coalition is an older coalition. It has been around for 21 years at this spot. And sometimes it's really hard to think about how to keep sustaining it and how to keep the engagement and how to really keep moving forward. So as I go through the learning objectives, I would ask that everyone put in the chat, what year was your coalition formed? And I will say when I share, I can't always see the chat, so I'm going to try to read it a little bit. But so we're seeing MCRUD 1996, 2016, 2007, 2018, 2020, 2000. Yeah, so there's a huge range here, including some really older coalitions and people that probably have been doing this longer than I have. And really what I wanted us to look at today is just really understanding how do we as coalition staff hold the vision for our coalition. That is really our responsibility. Our responsibility isn't always to make sure everything happens for the coalition. We really focus on shared leadership, but as staff, we get the opportunity to hold the vision for the coalition. We also are the ones that are responsible for sustaining and re-engaging partners. People inevitably change jobs, leave roles, organizations change, organizational missions change, and we as staff really have the responsibility for bringing people back to the table. I always really like to think about every presentation I do, making sure that those in attendance really can walk away with something. So I also want you to think about what's one way you can participate in your community differently. And then how to make the connection between programming and coalition work. So we're gonna jump sort of right into why a coalition. And I put OSAP in brackets here because OSAP isn't the only coalition that I either chair or facilitate or am on the leadership board for. Coalitions are really about unifying our efforts and maximizing our impact and preventing duplication so that we use our available resources in the best way possible. So most of us here at this training are here because we work in substance use disorder prevention. And so that's really what OSAP is. But no matter what sort of coalition you're working on, no matter what topic area you're working in, coalitions help us create a shared community vision that unites efforts. So you'll see on my background, I have my Pinwheels for Prevention background up. That's because April is Child Abuse Prevention Awareness Month. So even when I am in spaces where I'm talking about OSAP during April, I'm bringing to the table the child abuse and neglect prevention lens. Community level change is only possible when we're all working together. We want to use resources more effectively, and coalitions really create the opportunities for partnering and resource sharing. So sometimes that means we have 2 organizations working together, or 3 organizations working together to put on an event. Or we have a couple of people both sharing the costs of a program. And working together as a coalition also puts us all in a stronger position to secure grants and to secure creative funding. So just a little bit of history of OSAP, just to sort of give you a framework for thinking about how do we hold this vision over time. So we were actually formed in 2002, and our coalition has switched organizations. Originally, it was at the Ottawa Area Intermediate School District, and now it transferred to Pathways MI in 2007. Pathways MI is actually no longer an organization, and we merged with Arbor Circle in 2016. And so even through organizational changes, staff of the coalition have an opportunity to really hold that vision and keep that vision moving forward. The funding was received about a year before our first steering committee was established. And that steering committee, while the people on that steering committee aren't the same anymore, that steering committee is actually still in existence. We started with our first strategic plan in 2004. It was launched in 2006. And then we also launched our fourth strategic plan in 2021. So we're really on this 5-year cycle, although we're a little bit off because pandemic, but we really work to every 5 years say, okay, are these goals and objectives still the same goals and objectives that we want to be addressing? And because we've really focused on the goals and objectives, because we've really focused on that mission, because we've really focused on those outcomes, that has helped us create sustainability. That's helped us when we didn't have any funding for a year. Actually, I think it was 2 years that the coalition didn't have any funding, didn't have any prevention dollars, didn't have DFC funding, and yet we still came together to really say, how do we keep moving this work forward? We routinely have a formative evaluation, which looks at, are we functioning okay? And staff lead that, but we contract that out. And then we continuously bring that back to the coalition. And so some of what that looks like is a steering committee who was willing to train the workers coming up behind them. So who you see, some of you might know Joyce Felker, who was on the original steering committee. She provided a ton of mentorship to make sure that the new steering committee that came up behind her was ready to take on that leadership. We've also made sure that our data has been sustainable over time. So in Ottawa County, we do the youth assessment survey that could look at like the MiFi, that could look like the like a supplemental survey. I'm gonna just quick check the chat a minute. And really the sustainability of our ability to look at what is going on for our youth, what are they saying, what do they need, how has their needs changed, and the ability to be flexible with that information. We add and change and update while sticking with the fidelity of the questions, the information about the that we're asking on the youth assessment survey. We update that, but we update it and respond, make sure that we're responsive to the community every cycle. And then we also continuously look at how do we sustain our youth involvement. So we are a coalition. Typically our members are providers, their staff, but we also make sure that we're sustaining the ways that we can engage our community members and our youth. And one of the things that we sort of do is we hold this tension between what needs to change, because things are always changing. The youth aren't, I mean, you can see in this picture, this looks like an older picture, right? The technology of photos have changed, our styles have changed, our hairstyles have changed. And yet the thing that's consistent is youth are here together connecting. And so we really pay attention to what needs to change and what do we get to do repeatedly so that we can just get better at it over time. Which is our how we talk to you. So we have been doing a Safe Prom initiative and education around Safe Prom for at least 20 years, because it was going on before I joined the coalition, and we still do it. But we have allowed what the campaign looks like to change and to evolve over time. So COVID hit right as we were about to launch our Safe Prom initiative, and we instantaneously knew that we couldn't do anything with it. In fact, we had everything printed, we had envelopes purchased, we were in the process of stuffing our mailer, and we had to shut it all down. And so what that meant is we redesigned it all. And instead of being a Safe Prom campaign, it became Safe Spring. And actually, we had some timing issues, so this actually became Safe Summer. And we have now actually just added Safe Summer to our work. But it's that ability to look at our initiatives and say, what can we change and what can we update? Which looks like this. When we first started OSAP, we did not talk much about mental health. But then over time, we have really seen through our data the need to connect mental health efforts and mental wellness promotion to our efforts around substance use disorder prevention and early initiation of alcohol use. And so we have upped our game in terms of how do we support youth and building those mental health skills. Let's get this. So we also have really focused on helping the coalition get better and developing their skill set in terms of who we are and how we talk about who we are. So this was our first mission of OSAP. We who live, work, and care about youth in Ottawa County will prevent substance use through effective, coordinated, and sustainable action. That's still what we do. That actually would still be a viable mission statement, but it felt a little old. It felt a little stale. And so when we launched our 4th strategic planning, we also launched a mission and vision sort of refresh. And so now we say that OSAP's mission is to work together to prevent substance use disorders among youth, family, and community members in Ottawa County. We updated the language. We really made sure we got a lot of feedback. And that took, I will say, that took some staff work. That took some coordinating of meetings. That took sending surveys out. That took doing some focus groups. And it also took going directly to key stakeholders and saying, how does this language feel to you? The things, though, that didn't change was what we talked about earlier, was the purpose and the function. We might have updated some of this language, but really the purpose and the function of coalitions stay consistent over time. We are working to come together, to bring our work together so that we can make more effective change in our community. And so this is what the structure of the OSAP coalition looks like, but it really starts with that strategic plan. It really starts with setting those goals and objectives that really looking at what is the purpose of the impact of OSAP or of the coalition. So that in the coalitions that I work with, they all have strategic plans. They all are data-driven strategic plans, even the ones where our purpose is not necessarily to achieve a specific outcome. We still look at data pretty consistently in order to be able to make wise choices about our action steps. It's like something is in, yeah, okay. And so one of the things that's really important is that everyone contributes and is connected. I'll show an example of this in a little bit, but what we really strive to do is you can see echoes of SCAN's strategic plan, of the Stop Child Abuse and Neglect Council strategic plan, in the OSAP strategic plan. You can see echoes of OSAP strategic plan in the SCAN Council strategic plan. you can see echoes of OSAP's goals and objectives and some of the other community coalitions as well. Because what we're striving to do is to really sustain the impact of our work and to keep the vision at the forefront. And so the places where we can be connected is really the places that we find the most engagement and partnership. So what I want you to do right now in thinking about that, everyone is contributes and is connected. What is one other coalition that might be present in your community that you are not engaged with? Or if there is, or maybe it's, where would more engagement in your community, or maybe an additional coalition, doesn't necessarily have to mean more meetings, but an additional connected collaborative effort, where would that be helpful in the current issues that you're seeing in your community? And just, I want you to like take note of it, write it down, and then we'll continue to think about how we might be engaged with that. So I'm going to give you about 15 more seconds. So if you didn't get a chance to write it down, continue to write it down while we continue to talk. So then we have to think about where do staff fit? What is the role of staff in this? And our staff support our subcommittees. We support our steering committee. We host meetings a lot. We sort of hold the Zoom rooms for most of the OSAP coalition meetings and subcommittee meetings, but we don't always lead. We really look at ways to have other people leading the agenda, giving voice to the agenda, or even being the chair of different organizations. Currently, I am the chair of the OSAP coalition, but our goal is that within the next year, I would no longer be the chair of the OSAP coalition. I'm not the primary staff for OSAP anymore. So being the chair did not create a conflict. Our coalition team lead is actually prohibited from being the chair in our bylaws. And then we show up for others. I'll give another example of this in a minute, but we attend the Ottawa County Opiate Task Force. We provide support for their activities. We even lead some of their activities or some of the efforts that help support them because we want to show up for them. We also show up for other coalitions. We have a coalition in our community called the Zealand Action Coalition. Even though staff don't love the 7 a.m. meeting time, we show up to that meeting so that we can be of a support. And that would be an example of a shared activity and a shared strategy that's happening right now. Zach and OSAP are partnering together to host a Screenagers filming. We also look for ways that we can lend experience and knowledge. So what this means is we have staff that sit on the Talk Sooner core team so that we can really help support other initiatives that we're connected to, but that might need some additional knowledge, might need some additional work. And so we build into our staff time the opportunities for that. We also make sure that we're connected to all levels of the community. So the quadrant subcommittee structure, we developed and created subcommittees that just specifically focused on the individual population centers of our community. So Ottawa County is a little bit different. Our population center is not in the middle of our county. It's actually the middle of our county is farmland. And so our population centers are in our corners, which means the things that happen in Grand Haven and Spring Lake are not the same things that happen in Jenison and Hudsonville. And so when we just had county-wide subcommittees, we weren't getting the engagement. So for a large number of years, we've been running these quadrant-based subcommittees that are really focused just on the specific areas. And those have really helped lend themselves to sustainable action over time and sustainable outcomes over time. Now, the other thing we have to be able to do is adapt, change, and pivot. And so in the last couple of years, those quadrant subcommittees haven't been able to be sustained. They haven't continued to be as effective. And so the places where our community members aren't able to engage, we're letting those subcommittees go. And maybe they'll come back and maybe they won't. But we create new opportunities for addressing what's bubbling up as a priority in our community all the time. And then we make sure that all sectors are engaged. So we have a really strong youth coalition, and we also support unique opportunities in each individual school. And that looks different in every school in our community. But then we tried to do a parent coalition, and parents of teenagers didn't want another meeting. I don't blame them. And so what we do instead is we look for ways to give parents voice that are unique. And the other thing that I think is really important, especially as you're looking at a visual of our structure, is that the flowchart shouldn't be the thing we focus on. Our steering committee is on the same line as our quadrant subcommittees, but our steering committee's role is really the functioning of the coalition, the bylaws, the reports, the meeting structure, looking at our funding and what we want to do to move the work forward. So their role is not the same as the quadrant subcommittee. And so we don't focus on the flow chart. We don't focus on where things are. We created a visual so people can figure out where they fit a little easier. And because when you are doing presentations and reports, it's easier to have a picture of it. But this is not the way we talk about the work. The way we talk about the work is around what can we do together? What are you seeing that you need some help with? And what is my team seeing that they need some help with? And then we really look for creative partnerships. So we have law enforcement, and this follows the 12 sectors. But I think the thing that we really need to think about when we're thinking about the 12 sectors is that the engagement for every sector doesn't have to look the same. Law enforcement come to meetings for the most part, but sometimes they can't. Sometimes things come up for them. And so we make sure that even when they can't make a meeting or they don't have a staff person that can be assigned to that group, that they have the ability to speak into what's happening, to give updates, and then to get information back that's helpful for them. We've had government officials that have participated in the coalition and then have been able to take things back to their meetings. But that hasn't meant that they've attended every single meeting. Sometimes what this looks like is us just scheduling meetings to say, here's what's going on in your community, and here's what it looks like, and here's what we're doing to support, and is there something that you think we're missing? Our local school districts participate typically in the quadrants, but then they also participate really by partnering with us to put on different events. And then our youth serving organizations, sorry, I forgot to click the slide. Our youth serving organizations, one of the things that we've really done is create tools that all of us can use so that we are sharing the same message, but it looks different depending on what our programs and services are. So we have an organization that provides one type of youth programming, and sometimes they're able to bring us in to do some work, and sometimes they just take what we've created and use it in their work. And retailers and businesses, I would say they mostly don't come to meetings, but what they do is they put up our Safe Prom information. They promote our Family Meals Month. They put out our different content to their patrons so that they are participating with us and they are helping us move the work forward without them taking time that doesn't make sense for them to come to a meeting. We also, whenever we create new things that we think we might give them to push out, we give them opportunity for feedback. We say, hey, is this even helpful? Would you even like to do this? But the thing about this work, the thing about these sectors is that it really takes intentionality. We aren't just inviting people to come to meetings. We really have a specific ask, but we also really focus on how often do I reach out. It's been harder the last 3 years, right? Like we don't have the meeting after the meeting anymore. So I am a lot more intentional about just sending that email to say, hey, can we go get coffee? Hey, can we get together over Zoom? Hey, I had this thing come up and I'm confused. Let's get a quick phone call. Partnerships can be formal and informal. Sometimes we're really creating a formal partnership where we're going to do this work together. And sometimes it's quick phone calls and texts periodically that just say, hey, I got this going on. What do you got going on? Let's make sure that we're not stepping on each other's toes. Or maybe it's, hey, we both have this thing going on. Let's reach out to this community that we're trying to bring to the schools. Let's reach out together. When we think about partnerships, we also want to be able to build opportunities for success. So my team will tell you that I'm often like, cool, we got this thing done. We did it. We launched it. Now let's go on to the next thing. And so really what I've been working on over time is how do we celebrate, recognize, and promote those successes? So that's what we're doing now, because that's what people need to see to help keep the vision over time. They need to see the recognition of how their thing, how their effort, how the project, what built for success. And so the next piece of that is really celebration and recognition. We have a great video. We have an annual meeting every year. And in that annual meeting, we really give away about like 10 to 15 awards, recognizing anything from community volunteers to retailers who haven't failed a compliance check, or who maybe did not pass a compliance check, but really made some significant changes. They get recognized. We do a press release. We push out the video on social. We do all the things that we can do. But we also do little pieces of recognition. I talked about Safe Prom earlier. And one of the things that we're doing for Safe Prom is any business who participates in Safe Prom gets a social media shout out. And they get tagged and they get all the things so that we can really say, hey, look at this retailer who's doing a really great job, or look at this hotel that's putting out information about prom and not allowing underage drinking on their premises, or look at this florist who is putting these information pieces out to kids as they're picking up boutonnieres and corsages for prom. We constantly review who's at the table, and we constantly review what we've done and the impact it's made. I'm going to just quick check the chat. Okay. All right. So then again, just opportunities, really what we try to do. And this is one of the things that we're really trying, this is sort of like our next step, right? Our quality improvement. How do we get better at doing what we're doing? And the way that we're doing that is we are trying to collect all of the things that our partners do every month towards the goals and objectives of the coalition, so that when we put out our evaluation report, or when we put out a quarterly update, we can say, oh yeah, and the sheriff's department did this, and this school did this, and this community organization did this, and this is the outcome that we're seeing from that, so that everybody can see their contribution reflected in the work. It takes responsive staff. I'll be honest, I'm not super great at email lately, but so I'm giving different ways for people to get a hold of me so that I can be more responsive to our partners. I'm sorry, I forgot to click the button. And then action oriented. How do we make sure that all the things that we're doing, we like leave with an action to do? And not everybody might have a to-do list, but there is active decision making around action that the coalition is taking. And then sometimes we have to root it back in historical knowledge. We have to go back to that mission. We have to go back to that vision. We have to go back to where our outcomes have been in order to see what the path is moving forward. So what I want you to do is, you already sort of looked at like, what is a coalition that you're not, or a community collaborative initiative that you're not involved in, that it might make sense for you to be involved in, or that might be a good connect for your substance use disorder prevention work. And now I want you to identify a partner. Like, who is it that you would like to bring to the table that really could take some intentionality that might help you better engage with that coalition, or with that other initiative, or with that other thing that's going on that could use some additional partnership. And I'm going to give you just about 20 seconds to think about that and to write that down. So research says we remember things better when we write it down. Actually, even handwriting, even over typing. So I'll tell you what I do. I actually write in my, I live and die by my Outlook calendar. Everybody will tell you that. Like, if it's not in my calendar, it's not happening. But then I also have a hard copy planner, and I actually write in the planner, who do I need to connect with this week? Who do I need to connect with this month? What is the initiative? So write it, find a piece of paper. It could be a sticky note, and write it down. And while you continue to do that, I'm going to give you a story. When I first started in 2007 in Holland, there was an uptick in violence related to gang activity. And as I was as I was being taught my position, as I was building my programs, once I sort of got my feet under me, I started getting invited to this committee that was really looking at the safety of our local parks. That was really looking at these violence-related things that were happening. And then at the same time, I was being brought in to be more and more engaged in the OSAP coalition. And as I really, on the surface, like, I sort of was like, I am not sure how this is related. I am not sure like that this actually fits for me to spend my time there. It turns out that this is one of the first initiatives that I was involved in that that connected the Gang Reduction Committee and the OSAP coalition. And it was one of the ways in which we made the biggest dent in some of our early initiation of substance use and our distribution of substances to minors for underage, either drinking or marijuana use or other substances or other drugs. And so the other thing that this did was it introduced me to people, and it built some early relationships. Because I showed up, because I was there, and because I volunteered to contribute to efforts, people came to OSAP. And so one of the things to think about is, where is it that you can show up? This is one of the first things I say to new staff when they're starting, especially if they're working with a coalition. I say, where can we show up first? Because if we are going to invite people to all the things that we are engaged in, we have to show up first. So you've already listed an initiative or a thing happening in your community that could use some additional collaboration, or that you could get involved in that you're not typically involved in. You've listed a partner. Now I want you to think about what thing can you do? It could be show up to a meeting. It could be provide a free presentation. There's a million things it could be. But what is the way that you can show up first? I'll give you another 15 seconds. And then once you show up, you have to give opportunity for people to show up in your spaces as well. So one of the things that happened in our last strategic planning process is, as we were strategic planning, we were creating these goals and objectives, and our coalition really said, we don't need to prioritize prescription drugs. We have another coalition on that. They have it. They're doing a great job. We don't need that in our strategic plan. So we launched our final version. We were taking a final vote on, like, is this a fully developed strategic plan that we want to launch? And we had a couple of responses that said no. And so I dug in and I looked at, okay, who said no? Like, we have a consensus model. So we pretty much all have to agree. And I was like, all right, so who said no? I got to see why. Turns out we had not, because we hadn't included prescription drugs in our strategic plan, the opiate task force felt like they weren't represented. And so we went back and we added back in those misuse of prescription drug goals, objectives, and outcomes. And it doesn't mean that we're doing those activities for them, but it means that we're creating space for their work to show up in our space and our work to show up in their space. And that has been exceedingly effective for us. And then we make sure that we know what's going on. And I sort of already talked about this already, but we really make sure that we present routinely the data that we are working with to our coalition. In fact, on the top of every agenda is the data point, the goal, objective, or outcome that the coalition or the subcommittee is working towards. And so we not only make sure that we know the information as staff, but we make sure our team knows it. And then we always have a call to action. So our annual report, our annual meeting has a call to action. What are we going to do? How can we engage? What is the action we're going to take? And sometimes that action is individual action. Sometimes that action is collective action. And sometimes the action is just a couple of us are like, yep, we are on that, we've got it. But we give very concrete ways for these call to action. And then at the end of every agenda, every meeting, we have a summary of next steps. So we might have a full agenda and we're talking, we're making decisions throughout the entire meeting. And then at the end of every meeting, or especially ones that I'm the facilitator of, I say, okay, so our next steps are this. Am I right? Did I get everything? Are we missing anything? And that repetition of next steps, that clear spot where we can all go to see what are my to-dos over this next time period has been really critical in making sure the work moves forward. And then when we can't make the work move forward for whatever reason, we're super honest about it. And we look to see, does this maintain the priority? And so some of these calls to action might just be, hey, we created this tool for you to use in your space. We really work to make sure that staff are not the ones always implementing every strategy, but that instead we're the ones taking the minutes, we're the ones supporting, we're the ones sort of holding the structure so that everybody else can do the thing. And so a huge part of what we've done over the last few years is create these virtual tools so that other partners can really take the virtual tools, borrow them, or just use them, plunk them into their thing and push it out. And that has that's been our model for the last few years, and that has been the most successful way for us to make a more significant impact. So we have mental health videos, we have postcards, we have stickers, and all of it is accessible. We started doing this sort of partnership work back when we were still printing binders and having to somehow get binders to every school. And now we've sort of said, and they were asking us like, do you have a digital version? Do you have a digital version? And just because of copyright, we couldn't at the time, because of how we structured it. And so what we've done is gone back and we've said, okay, everything needs to be digital at this point. And so we're slowly building more and more tools. And our tools are examples of this collaborative partnership. So we did a video series on mental health skills that I'll show. I won't show the full video at the end, but we filmed sort of the beginning and the end. And when we did, and then when we had that piece of the filming, we invited all of the coalition partners to be in the videos. I actually tried not to be in the videos. So, you know, we're really looking at where can we provide recognition to our partners? Where can we provide support to them? And where can we make their work easier because of what we're doing? And then we look at programming, and we look at how, so Arbor Circle provides both the coalition support, and we also provide programming. And so we really look at where does programming fit and where does staff fit. And so our staff consists of our coordinator, who's our coalition team lead, our youth coalition coordinator, and then myself as the program director. And so I participate in like 3, I think, of these committees now, because my coalition coordinator and team lead really is the one now that's showing up. I'm sort of managing the higher level picture, and she's supporting the day-to-day operations. And our youth coalition coordinator is also supporting those and showing up to really focus on our youth. But our youth initiative isn't just solely on our coalition coordinator. We also have program staff that have been assigned to support the youth coalition. So it's this partnership. And I have really thought about our structure and our team and our programs to say, if we're the ones coordinating our coalition, then we have to be able to model effective collaboration. We can't invite people to the table if we can't work well together internally. And so most of my staff, actually, most of our programs and services in my division have more than one staff who is a part of that work. One person is often sort of the lead, which just means like they have the primary responsibility for like the reports or making sure the work moves forward, and somebody else is partnering with them. And who's the lead sort of changes on every project, and which staff has lead in what changes on every project as well. But the expectation is that they would collaborate and team well. So you have an initiative to get involved with. You have a person that you want to reach out with. You've identified a way that you want to show up first to your community. Who can you team with? Take 15 seconds and write that down. Who can you team with more effectively? Because this is sort of what my division looks like. And I know not all of us have big teams, and not all of us have as much happening as my division does, but some of us do. So we have there's me, and this isn't a full depiction of my full division org chart, but it's sort of the way we think about the work. We have our coalition work and we have our programming work. And we really work to partner everything so that our programming is informed by our coalition, and our coalition is informed by our programming, so that it's really this mutual relationship and this mutual teaming, so that if our coalition staff were to need to miss a couple of meetings that it was really important for youth voice to be represented at, our youth coordinator would be able to step in and be like, yep, I know what that is. I know what's going on. I can give you that update. Or if our prevention manager can't attend a thing, their partner could show up and be like, yep, this is what we have going on. But also so that when we're talking about initiatives and we're like, man, we really need some youth input in that. The partnered staff or like staff can work together to go back to our programs and say, this program we have over here, maybe it's a parenting program and we're working on some parent education. So we bring that back to the parenting programs to say, hey, parents, what's going on? Like, how does this resonate with you? Does this work? I'm gonna, real quick before I move to the next slide, I'm gonna just take a look at the, okay. Just taking a look at the chat, making sure we're moving forward. And so what I did and how I've built the division over time, which has actually led to being able to increase funding, not just through our substance use disorder block grant dollars, but to increase funding for programs and services, to increase programs and services, and to really build a bigger team, is that the first thing we start with in my division actually serves a 12 county region. Our prevention specific team serves a 5 county region. And so what we do is we show up to the coalitions and we first listen and we first say, okay, what is going on that that we can address with our programs? What is happening that we have the opportunity to show up and support? And maybe that show up and support means that we do something that isn't 100% specifically related to programming, but that is related to the work of the coalition and helps us still achieve our goals. An example of that is our youth prevention manager participated in a drug take back day on last Saturday. And that wasn't even something that I suggested he do. It was something that he told me he had signed up to do. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, what connected you to that? And he's like, I'm just showing up because I know that showing up is going to help us really be effective in implementing our youth programming. And so we look at what are the problems and goals of that community, that for those coalitions that we can really help address. What are the intervening variables that really relate to the work that we're providing? And what is the local condition? So in Ottawa County specifically, because that's really what I'm talking about today, we've really looked at the early age of initiation for a long time. And for a long time, we were making some really good progress. And that progress is, vaping has sort of stalled out that progress a little bit. And so, but as we look at what is the goals and objectives in Ottawa County, the coalition has really identified this specific need to address youth opportunities for pro-social involvement. How are we connecting youth to their communities? As a prevention program, outside of the coalition work, we actually have some really strong programs that do this and do this well. And that is our Total Truck Quest program, which is our after-school running program for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade male identifying youth, where we equip volunteers to support teams of up to 15 boys. Now, the pandemic has hit some of these programs. And so because of that, we aren't quite at the capacity that we were pre-pandemic, but pre-pandemic, we had 160 volunteers that we were connecting with groups of male identifying youth to teach them, essentially to teach them healthy choices and to support their engagement in pro-social opportunities. But as we also look around at what are the other programs that are happening. And we've been working to really help connect with and be a cheerleader for a couple of other programs in our community, which include Upward Bound or our Latin Americans United for Progress Más Adelante. And so we don't expect every program to have the substance use lens or the expertise, but we can connect with them and support them in that so that there's more opportunities for youth. Because the reality of a coalition is that we can't do it all by ourselves. We can't make this community change by ourselves. So continuing to look at how do my programs support the work of the coalition, and how does the coalition goals and objectives help guide the implementation of our programs, or what we talk about in our programs, or how we support kids, is really the key to moving all of this work forward. Like I included one of our Kent County programs, which is our day program, which really was decimated by the pandemic. And so we had to stop providing that program. Now contexts have changed again. And so we're looking at it for a summer program, but we'll never go back. Well, I can't say never. We are not at this time anticipating going back to a full day program looking the way it once did. But we are trying to create these spaces, carve out these opportunities for youth to get involved, primarily because our coalition said that is one of the things that's happening in our community, is that our youth are disconnected. And if we want to create real change, we have to make sure that our youth is connected. And tying that back to, I'm gonna real quick change this. Tying that back to data, I'm gonna just quick change my share. Oh, no, I'm not. Never mind. I'm gonna go to a different slide. Hold on 1 second. Is we know that that is an effective. We know that that's an effective strategy because we have the data to tell us that it's an effective strategy. I'm gonna end my slideshow really quick so that I can reshare from the slide that I want to be on. Sorry, hold on, the Zoom thing is in my way, which is why I can't hit share slip. There we go. So I want to show one more example of a place where we connected our coalition and our programming work. Our youth coalition really identified wanting to do a youth a campaign about why not to use substances or what they do instead, or how they cope with mental health. And our Kent teen program also was looking at that. And so our SLIC Student Leaders Initiating Change and our Kent Youth Prevention Program partnered together to create our little youth mental health clips. So hopefully this comes up. And so this is just the 15-second, this is not.
Skills that you can learn to help you to cope with the everyday stresses.
Let's do this together.
So that's our 15-second ad. Hold on one more time. I have a different playlist I wanted to show. I don't have the correct playlist. I apologize. I'll show a different one.
When I experience stress and anxiety in my life, I really like to read and listen to music.
So we have 9 of these. So it doesn't continue to play. So we have 9 of these that then lead youth towards our events page, where we then have our youth leadership trainings. Now, it hasn't been 100% successful. We have yet to actually hold a youth prevention training this fiscal year. So that's the other thing, is part of this holding the coalition vision is also knowing that sometimes what we do falls flat and it doesn't work out the way we wanted it to. And we're pretty honest about it. We say things like, that didn't work, and what can we do instead? Or we say, this didn't really go how we wanted it to, and here's what we're tweaking about it. Here's what we're changing about it. Here's what we're going to adapt to see if it will work next time. And it's also meant that we have stopped things. So I talked about the quadrant groups. We've stopped the quadrant groups in some areas. Some areas we're ready to bring them back when the community is ready. Some areas we've kept them going. We stopped really doing a lot of parent workshops for a while and created parent education videos. So the ability to sort of be honest when things fall flat and come back to the coalition and say, that didn't work, what can we do instead? So as a quick summary, coalition staff really are the ones that are in a unique position to hold the vision for the coalition, to hold the history, and also hold where it's going. But in order to do that, we have to keep the mission, goals, and aims at the center. So I do want to take 15 more seconds. You've sort of identified some people to connect with, some ways to show up. What are the goals that you can bring to that person, or you can bring to that initiative, that would be collective, coordinated goals that would help you both succeed? So show up first, even if it's not directly SUD related. Engage partners by finding those common goals and the creative and unique partnership opportunities. Connect your programs to the needs of the community. And remember that sometimes programs are better suited to the objective, and sometimes it's a coalition strategy, and work together to determine who. And so here are just some ways that we provide connection for our coalitions. Sometimes it's in the form of just the newsletter. Sometimes it's in the form of our website. Sometimes it's sending out youth applications to join our youth coalition. And then here is my contact information. And I'm going to check the chat one last time.
And Leigh, if you would put that email in the chat as well, because there may have been some people who wanted to ask you questions, but we're headed into lunch and I want them to still have the opportunity to contact you should they have the questions.
Yep. And Ruth did put, Ruth did put the link to the OSAP YouTube channel in the chat. So thank you so much, Ruth. Mm-hmm. We have several different playlists with a ton of video content. So check it out. It's been a really great tool for us this year.
Thank you so much for that very engaging presentation.